and everyone. Welcome to douglAR Radio in Atlantic Studio. Yeah, douglAR Radio in Atlantic Studio. As we go forward, ladies and gentlemen, I will impart some knowledge in relation to our radio program. However, there is some difficulties. What I know after speaking with one of the management team yesterday while I were on my way to St. Joseph Jayanti Speaks, and what was said to me is that the management of the radio station have since changed in somewhat, and at the same time, this new management more tend to follow more or less government rules, regulation by way of some level of support. Now, I have no problem because, to each his own. But what I will say is that one of the most dangerous things with media houses is when you have these media houses supporting a political party and would not allow just due or to allow the principle of natural justice to prevail. And that is something that we have seen over the years with various and sundry media houses. One guy said to me that there is no way that media houses can survive without government subvention and without, of course, benefiting from the public purse as far as governance is concerned. Now, all that may very well be good. All that may very well be okay. But I have a problem when a media house will take a position not to bring the facts to the forefront simply because there is a high level of support and maybe in some case dependency on government funding and support for a political party. And that is where I will tell you that journalism in this country is a real joke. It is a real joke. Because you cannot tell me, ladies and gentlemen, that while we will have journalists who we will depend on to bring the facts to you, to the listening public, where you will have a clear insight as to the role and the responsibility of government and the way in which government conduct their business. I want to say special welcome to none other than the Honorable Semator Jayanti Lutchmedial, who is, of course, part of the program and may very well, as time permits, be a host in relation to douglAR Radio. So we will hear from her in a while, but I'm saying to you that when you have media houses who would actually debar the truth from coming out in the public domain simply because they support a political party, I am saying that that is where I believe that journalism is a joke in this country, because whether you support the PNM or not, I think that journalists have an obligation and a responsibility to ensure that truth comes to you, the public, and that you would be equally informed as to what is happening with the affairs of our country. So I have no problem whether the radio station takes a position, whether they take a position where they decide that they will no longer carry douglAR Radio because of their ties or their allegiance to the PNM. I have no problem with that. No problem. But I'm simply pointing out to you that this is a problem that we experience with the print media. This is a problem that we experience with almost every media house in this country. Unfortunately, There is platforms that is still available where we could bring the facts to you, where you could have a clear knowledge and a clear understanding as to what is taking place with the role of governance in the country. We have seen that the media try to disguise and assist every PNM MP in relation to every flaw that may come to the public domain. They window dress it, they paint it up, and they bring a picture to you, creating doubt in your mind that this may not be so. We, of course, which we will touch on later, Foster Cummins and other issues, Reginald Amor, Faris Alwari, Stuart Young, and others. And even as far back as Delcy Rodriguez, when they came in to sit with Prime Minister Keith Rowley, and Rowley pretends that he had no idea who was on the delegation. He pretends that he didn't know Astrobal Chavez. He pretend, and we know how the diplomatic chain work. And he stood up in front of the media and he said he now coming to know. So he didn't know was a whole PDVSA high-ranking official that came with Delcy Rodriguez on that delegation. And the media disguise it all out. They're telling you, well, look, who you should blame, and could it be the Prime Minister was not aware? But guess what? Was the Prime Minister and his Minister of National Security at the time, which was Stuart Young. And of course, both of them being part of the sitting in that diplomatic center, to the end of the day, we know what they said to us on the media. And that is what happens as we go along. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give the Honorable Senator the opportunity to introduce herself there. She's no stranger to you, the public. You have seen her performance in the Parliament just recently in relation to the bail bill. And of course, we have seen her works throughout her tenure in sitting in the Senate as a UNC senator, as an opposition senator, I should say, and the role and function and the way that she performed her duty quite diligently. So, of course, without further ado, I will allow the senator to introduce herself to you. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor. And, you know, it's really a pleasure. This is my first time that I am coming on douglAR Politics Live. I've actually done interviews when Anil was here earlier on and so on, but I've never actually been here live in the studio. So it's a little new for me, but it's interesting. You know, now that we have less restrictions in place and so on, we are coming out together physically a little bit more, and it's very good. Last night we had a really wonderful meeting up at St. Joseph, and it's good again to see the UNC family and supporters and the show of support that we are getting, particularly on these Thursday night TNT Speaks meetings, which are community centered. It really shows the vibrancy of our party, but also it shows the interest of the people in hearing about issues. So let me get right into the issue that I want to talk about, because it is the subject of a lot of misinformation which is being peddled by the government and their agents. This has to do with this bail amendment bill that we lobbied very hard in the Senate. We spoke very forcefully against it, and I will go through the reasons for that today so that you understand them very clearly. Because of course the government is going to try to create a narrative now that crime is out of control because the opposition would not support this legislation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the furthest thing from the truth, because crime is already out of control. Crime has been out of control for the last 3 years while this legislation has been in place. So that is the first one of the issues that we raised there. But let me just tell you a little bit about legislation that limits people's constitutional rights. Any piece of legislation that comes before the parliament, you have to ask yourself as a parliamentarian, regardless of where you sit, government, opposition, or independent, and even as citizens of this country, is the law that they are seeking to pass legal? And even if it is legal, is it justifiable? And if it is justifiable, then is it really necessary, and is the law working? When you have a law in place and there's a time limit on it, it's what you call a sunset clause. The reason you put in that sunset clause is because it is such a draconian measure and it is limiting the rights of people, that you want to be able to come back to the parliament to examine whether or not it is necessary to continue it. And that is what happened in 2019. That was the concession and the agreement that was arrived at between all the parties in 2019. The government said, we need this, we need this, we need this. We said, fine, we will give you the support. It was passed. And after 3 years, it was meant to come back to the parliament to examine if the thing was working. So that is what happened this week in the Senate. They came there to give us the opportunity to speak on it. But things have also changed in the law. One senator, when I was not in the Senate on Monday, said, well, he wants to know what has changed from the opposition, how you could support this thing in 2019 and you cannot support it now. Well, I want to explain to you all something very carefully. In law, it is not just about legislation that is passed in the parliament, but how the courts interpret law also has an impact on what is legal and what is illegal, what may be constitutional and what could be struck down as being unconstitutional. Since 2019 to now, they have had significant developments in the law. One of the major ones being that the court ruled that another subsection, I should say, because within that one section 5 of the Bail Act that we were dealing with, there was a first section that said you could not automatically, you were not allowed to get bail for murder and treason and other offenses. And then the government inserted below that if you had 2 pending matters, or you had a conviction already and then another matter now charged with certain types of offenses, you also could not get bail. A case was heard at the High Court and then again at the Court of Appeal about the automatic denial of bail for murder. And the Court of Appeal in this country, the Chief Justice himself wrote a decision saying that a move like that to be included in legislation such as the Bail Act is an encroachment upon an infringement on the separation of powers. The separation of powers means that the parliament has a role, the judiciary has a role, and the executive, which is the government, has a role, right? And these people, you're supposed to stay in your lane. That's essentially what it means in simple terms. And it is for parliament to make laws, but it's for the judiciary to interpret and apply the laws. So parliament cannot take away the judicial discretion whether or not to grant bail. And the Chief Justice made it very clear in that judgment, which was handed down just this year, just a few months ago, saying that the automatic ban by the parliament, saying to the judiciary, hey, you see this man here, once he's charged with that offense, this thing where you are automatically not giving him bail, that is wrong, it cannot be done, it is struck down. So fast forward a few months later now, this intellectually bankrupt government, who apparently cannot read and understand, that the same principle that apply to murder cases will also be applied to other cases which they are now seeking to extend this act and say no bail here. The same way the court interpreted the section that dealt with murder, the court would have to interpret the sections that they were seeking to extend that deal with restrictions on bail for other offenses. And the court has said because those restrictions and a fetter upon the discretion of the judiciary is a violation of separation of powers, no law that is passed in that way could be reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. So when I went to the Senate and that I spoke, I thought that I made my point very clear and they understood. But this junior counsel note taker, Reginald Armour, responded to me and said, I need to reread the judgment. I don't know why he didn't read his PIACO 1 notes properly before he swore that affidavit. That is what he was supposed to do. But he obviously is trying to hoodwink the population into believing that the law as it applied in the Achille Charles matter and the judgment that stands in the Achille Charles matter today and that is being applied by the judiciary in this country would not similarly apply to other matters involving bail. And that is why I said in the parliament and people heard and it was reported and I said, it will be struck down, because you cannot say on the one hand that parliament cannot interfere in terms of restrictions for bail on people who are charged with murder, but on the other hand you are saying it is okay to restrict bail for people if they are charged with 2 firearm offenses or 2 drug offenses or 2 something else. A person who is charged still enjoys the presumption of innocence, whether we like it or not. We might say if a person is charged once by the police and then they get charged again while that matter is pending and they are out on bail, well, it had to be that something is wrong with them and they are guilty. That might be the instinctive reaction that many people will have. But how many of us know someone who has had a negative experience with the police? How many of us know somebody who say, well, the police set me up? I mean, these things happen, and that is a reality. But whether we like it or not, whether we want to have people thrown into prison or not, whether we feel safer knowing that once someone is in trouble with the law and they are arrested by the police, they have to be locked away in remand yard and they are not out there to reoffend. That is an instinctive, visceral reaction that many people may have, but it is not the law. And we have to uphold the law. So that is why when people talk about it may have been a dereliction of their duty to not support the bill, I said that dereliction of duty is not to uphold the rule of law in this country. And the law in this country is quite simply that a person has a right, not a right to bail. We never gave bail to murderers. We are not giving bail to people who are repeat offenders. What we are giving people is their constitutional right to make an application to a magistrate or a judge for bail. And the judge or the magistrate could say, no bail for you for 10 days, 120 days, 6 months, 10 months, 10 years. It doesn't matter how long. If the judge or the magistrate feels that this person is going to reoffend, if they feel that this person is coming outside and will threaten witnesses, if they feel that this person may abscond and leave the country and they will not come to court when the date is called, if they feel that this person has previous convictions and is obviously a serial offender, or whatever it is, the court has the widest possible discretion and they can examine the facts of the matter. If they feel that the strength of the evidence against the person as presented by the police is so strong that this person must, it is highly probable that this person is guilty, they could say, listen, I'm not giving you bail and you must stay inside. But rather than allow magistrates and judges to deal with those things on a case-by-case basis, the PNM government believes that the answer to crime in this country is to say, no bail for you. Everybody, no bail. And I keep using the example over and over. And this is an example that we use when we argue the matter why persons charged for murder should still have the right to apply for bail and allow the judicial officer to consider the facts of the case. If a father walked in and saw the next door neighbor sexually assaulting his 17-year-old daughter, and he assaulted him and he wounded him, or he in a fit of rage he got his gun and he shot him, he would be charged for murder. If the man didn't die, he might be charged for shooting with intent, something like that. If that person appeared before the court and he had one other pending charge for, let's just say, something that's pending of a similar nature, he got into a fight somewhere and he was charged or whatever it is. So he had a conviction many years ago for some other infraction, but it falls within the schedule of offenses. That person will be denied bail. The same time he will be going to remand yard, he will be going there together with hardened criminals who are, let's say, gunmen for hire for a drug dealer, who go and assassinate people all over the country, who are owing money, who do drive-by shootings and, what we've been seeing like happening over the weekend, that type of thing. Are those two cases the same? Or can a judge or a magistrate, listening to the facts in both cases, how it happened, what were the circumstances and so on, can they make an informed decision as to whether or not the person should get bail? Can they make an informed decision as to whether or not this person is a threat to society, whether they should be let out, whether they should be kept inside and so on? Now, I want to say that we have full trust in the ability of the judiciary. There was some talk, and let us talk about the matters openly and frankly. There was talk at the time of the Andrea Barrett matter, when she was murdered, that the person who the police had arrested, the one who fell off the chair in the police station, that he had a very long criminal record, right? And he was still out on bail. Has the government or anybody actually examined why? Why, even if someone has matters pending, 4 or 5 matters pending, or why, even if a person had been convicted previously of different types of offenses, that magistrates and judges are still giving them bail? Why is that? I could only assume that the reason is that the state is operating so slowly in order to start these matters, and the matters are not starting before the court, either because the court is overburdened or the prosecution isn't ready. Or is it that because when the person was charged many times before, the matters fell through because the police weren't ready, they couldn't prove their case or whatever it is. But there's some reason why a person with 4 or 5 pending matters would be granted bail. And rather than come and tell us Well, listen, we have inquired into these matters about why so many people with previous convictions may be granted bail and so on. The government just beating the chest up and down the road to say, oh, it is we making inroads with this, we need this, this is helping us to control the crime situation. Well, that's the second point I want to get to, because apart from asking us to extend this unconstitutional law, the government has not shown us that the law was working. And I brought these statistics to the parliament. For 2 years that the law was in place, 2020, the law was passed in August of 2019. So I said forget 2019, that was only a couple of months. That wouldn't give us an accurate reflection when you look at the year-on-year totals. But from the beginning of 2020 to the end of 2021, you had 2 full years that this law was in effect, that people could have been denied bail for all of those offenses, sexual offenses, offenses against the person like wounding, shooting, etc., and many other types of offenses, serious crimes, yes, kidnapping, offenses under anti-gang, whatever it is. And do you know that murders increased? Do you know that woundings and shootings increased? Do you know that break-ins, house larceny, and so on increased? And not just did those crimes, serious crimes, increase from 2020 to 2021, while the police had this very important tool in their crime-fighting toolkit, as the PNM like to say, but the detection rate also fell. So crime was going up and the rate of detection was going down. So this bill, obviously, and this law being passed, preventing people from having their day in court and preventing people from having a magistrate or a judge assess whether or not they should be granted bail, and it was producing absolutely no results. I see that in his response, the Attorney General has tried to come and say, well, this number of people would have been denied bail, and they had previous convictions, and so the law automatically banned them from getting bail. Well, I intend to query some of those statistics, but apart from that, why does the Attorney General feel that had it not been for this law, that those people with, he said, more than 5 convictions, why does he feel that people with more than 5 convictions going before a magistrate would be granted bail anyway if it wasn't for this law? So come August the 5th, right? Let's say on August the 10th, the court is in session. And one of those same people come before the magistrate and ask for bail. And the magistrate looks at their record and sees that he has 5 convictions and he's convicted and he's now charged for a 6th conviction. Why do you feel you need a law to tell the magistrate you shouldn't grant that man bail? Do you not trust our judicial officers? Now, when the Achilles Charles matter, which they appealed to the Privy Council, was being heard, I was astonished. I almost fell off my own chair, not on a police station, but at home. And when I heard the state's attorney, right, an attorney retained from London to represent the state of Trinidad and Tobago, saying to the Privy Council that, the legislature doesn't trust the judiciary with the administration of bail. If that is where we reach in this country, and if that is the narrative that the PNM are trying to promote, that we cannot trust our judicial officers to administer the law, well then I don't know where we're going. Because the application of the law and the administration of justice falls to the judiciary. That is their role and that is their function. That is what we put them there to do. So the PNM, in their typical dictatorial style, don't want to stay in their lane. They are not giving law enforcement the resources that they need to raise the detection rate. They are not staffing the office of the DPP enough so that they have enough staff and so on that we could perhaps see an improvement in our conviction rate. They are not giving the judiciary, they keep talking about more courtroom, more staff, whatever. We are yet to see the impact of that. Something is wrong somewhere, and they have their role is really to make sure all of those things are in place so that justice could actually, take its course. Instead, they are telling the judges and magistrates how to do their job because they feel that they cannot do their job. And we had to take a stand against this, ladies and gentlemen. I know that a lot of people, especially people who have been victims of crime, and I want to tell you, I don't think there's anybody in this country who hasn't been touched by crime. I've had my immediate family touched by crime, so I know what it feels like. But at the end of the day, is it helping by denying someone their rights? There's a famous saying in the law, we call it a Blackstone's ratio, because I think William Blackstone back in the 18th century said it or something. I think he's talked about, it is better that 10 guilty men go free than 1 innocent man be convicted. Words to that effect. But I want to tell you today, it is better that 10 guilty people have the right to apply for bail than one innocent person be automatically thrown into remand yard for 120 days without even having the opportunity for a judge or a magistrate to weigh. That's what judges and magistrates do, you know. They sit in court and they weigh the balance. Should I remand this man to prison pending his trial, or should I let him out? What are the factors? And you deprive a magistrate or a judge from making that decision when you place legislation like this, then say automatically, once you are charged under any of these statutes, jail for you for 120 days. And if the case starts, and by start I mean they could bring one witness, they could bring the police officer and say, I got a call, I was in the station, I came on the scene, I saw something and I arrested this man. And once that one witness gives evidence, it means your case has started. You could be in remand yard for up to a year. I went through as well judgments written by judges that describe, and international human rights reports and so on, that describe our conditions in remand yard right now. And to subject someone to that when they are presumed innocent in the eyes of the law could never be right. It simply is not right. If a magistrate or a judge feels that there is sufficient evidence and the factors that they must consider are all listed in the Bail Act already, if they feel there's enough evidence that the person should not be given bail, well then fine, I agree, put them inside of there. But, you know, I want the population to understand that without having any assessment whatsoever on the merits of the case and the circumstances surrounding the alleged crime, this law was just going to put people in prison for 120 days, and that cannot be right, especially when for 3 years it has produced absolutely no results. So, you know, I know that Victor, you would talk a lot about justice and social justice and so on. Now, I consider myself to be a social democrat. I believe in democracy, but I also believe in social intervention. And let's talk a little bit about crime now and the social aspect of crime. Crime is a social problem. And why I say that the government brought this as to just hide their own incompetence is because the reason why crime is out of control is not because of bail. It is because of the many different ways that the government has failed in respect of social things. You know, when Kamala Persad-Bissessar introduced something they used to call a baby grant, you remember the reaction we got to that? Boy, they say all kind of thing, you're encouraging women to go out there and be loose and to just have children and this and that and the other. It was to allow for more you know, mothers to be able to stay at home in the first few months, those critical first few months of a baby's life. It was to make sure that mothers could afford milk. Anybody ever check the price of Similac? It is really expensive, and Enfamil. You know, all of those things contribute to the well-being of children from the day they are born. When you offer GATE, you raise the opportunity for people to have you know, access to education. You take people off of that pathway towards a life of crime. But the PNM government take away laptops from children. They take away grants that would have helped you know, children from primary school, secondary school, all of that. They take away you know, GATE. So I think this week I read in the newspaper about how postgraduate studies is now taking a plunge at the University of the West Indies. There was a time under this People's Partnership Administration when I said, well, our master's degree is going to become like nothing just now because everybody was doing a master's degree. And that's a good thing, you know. That is a good thing when you have a population wanting to educate itself. But they have taken away all of those opportunities now from so many people in our population. Coupled with that, right here in the Southland where I am from, you are seeing massive job losses from Point Lisas, Petrotrin, people in Lake Asphalt not getting paid for some 2 months. I seen big men going down on their knees on the Barber Green Road to beg for a salary from a state enterprise. Victor, that's your area, that is Labre. I mean, you understand? You understand what that means as a big man? You have a wife at home, perhaps raising your children. Children have been out of school for 2 years. Do you know how many mothers had to exit the workplace? I myself had to give up. I think I cut my own practice down by 75% because I had to be there to raise my child. I had to become a teacher overnight. So many women gave up their jobs in order to be able to stay home. And don't even start to talk about how many of them lost their jobs in fast food restaurants, in bars, in casinos. The economy has not rebounded the way we hope. We are still getting there. We hope to get there, but it's still not there. A lot of people are still jobless. So you have the government taking away social support. You have the government doing absolutely nothing to create jobs. Instead, jobs are being destroyed. What's the number now of the number of people who have lost jobs under the PNM? I think it's something like, what about?
Over 100,000 people.
Probably over 100,000. Yeah. When Kamala Prasad was creating 50,000 jobs, we have lost jobs under this government. And then we come to the position now where, so you take that there, education is being taken away from children, and you have escalating prices, out of control prices. I went in the grocery the other day, I nearly fall down. There was a time you could spend $1,000 in the grocery and you're pushing out a whole trolley. Now if you get 2 bags in your hand, feeling light, you could go swinging them. It's plenty for $1,000. The cost of food is ridiculous in this country right now. And when you put all those things together, what are you going to have? You're going to have a country of people who are desperate. And not everybody have the opportunities. And the PNM government, when we tell them come down from there, it's not just come down from their positions, but they also have to come down from their high horse and understand what everyday people deal with. During the pandemic, I saw firsthand, because I tried my best to work with our councillors and our MPs and so on to distribute hampers to people. And when you see the kind of conditions people were living out of, I met a woman, Victor, and it pains me to talk about this, but I met a woman who told me that she had to resort to basically a form of prostitution in order to care for her children during the pandemic. There was a bar over the road from where she was renting, and the owner told her, look, if you cannot pay the rent, I'm putting you out at the end of this month. And that woman would literally go out the road in the night and leave her children at home to sleep and lime and try to get involved with men and so on to get a little change to help her make up her rent. Do you see what people were driven to in this country? And then you want to ask me and you want to think about their criminals, and you just want to be with this broad brush and brand people as criminals. People still waiting for the salary relief grant. People still waiting for rental assistance grants. People who lost, I think, 6,000 small businesses. That was the estimate put out by somebody. The government said that is not true. But could they show the statistics? No, they have no statistics, They have no evidence whatsoever to come and show you about the real state of affairs. But when people come out and say, well, listen, this is our information, that 6,000 small businesses have closed and many of them are not going to reopen. And what is a small business? A small business is really the grassroots people in this country. So while the grassroots people are saying, we are suffering, we need help, the government say, no, that's not true, that's not true. Paula Gopi-Schoon 3 weeks ago said, yes, we will do something to talk about the price of flour. Yes, she said they was busy in Parliament. They've been busy in Parliament, so she didn't get to think about the price of flour as yet. Flour, a basic staple of bread and roti and bake that everybody grew up eating in this country. That is the easiest thing to make and put with it. You could grow a little kitchen garden and grow a little tomatoes and something like that, and you could live off flour and that, because you could make a little roti and choka or something and eat when the day come and feed your family. But they are doing nothing to even address the massive increase in the price of flour. It's happening everywhere in the world. So you're supposed to sit down and tell your children when they're hungry, well, listen, hunger is something happening everywhere in the world. So don't complain. That is what you expect people to tell their children.
If I could interject a little bit right there. Looking at the Attorney General, who, while he was probably at the hem of the Law Association, did not support that bill in any way. And what would have caused him, I'm trying to imagine, what would have caused him to condemn that same bill when he was within the ambits of the Law Association, and now as Attorney General will bring and support the same piece of legislation that he condemned just a couple of years ago.
And let me tell you something, let me add another dimension to that. Up to today, the Law Association still does not support that bill. When we were doing the Achille Charles matter, the Law Association actually became an interested party in that matter, and the Law Association did not support the government's position that there should be any restriction on bail. So today, the Law Association is still against bail restrictions and feel that it is not reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. And let me tell you, worse than that too. The member of Parliament for Port of Spain South, Mr. Keith Scotland, also argued a matter back in 2000, I think it was 2007 or 2008, where we fought against what was then in place in terms of bail restrictions. And he represented, the name of the case is Daniel Saint-Omer. So you have people who have in the past spoken out against any attempt by Parliament to restrict bail, now sitting on the PNM benches and supporting this. Tell me if that is not the height of hypocrisy. I don't know if it is that you have to make intellectual concessions when it is you join the PNM, but it appears that way to me, because all these fellas, when they're outside there, before they come and sit on the government bench, they make sense. They just talk sense. If you, I think in the Parliament, my colleagues, I think Senator Mark and others would have read the letter signed by the Attorney General when he was president of the Law Association, a very strongly worded letter saying that, you know, they were against this legislation. What it changed from then to now, you know, Independent Senator Paul Roberts asked why the opposition changed. We could justify why we changed. We changed because of the court ruling and because we see that the thing ain't working. But nobody can ask the Attorney General why he changed, and he cannot tell us why he changed. Now, this brings us to an interesting point. You see what's happening in the UK with Boris Johnson. You see he has had something like 40-something resignations. And let me tell you something about Westminster traditions. You want to uphold the integrity of your office. And you must uphold not just the integrity of your office, the integrity of the Parliament, the integrity of your political party. And that is why you see people resigning left, right, and center across there, because they understand that is the tradition. But the PNM do not subscribe to our democratic Westminster tradition. They have subscribed to something called the Cosa Nostra. They subscribe to this notion that you don't stand up for what is right, you do not stand up for what is true, you do not stick to your principles. You could argue one thing today, and then when you get a seat or you get a position in the Senate, you could come and argue the exact opposite and give absolutely no justification for that, except to say, well, I hear now and Rowley put me here, so I had to say what Rowley want me to put me here to say. That's the justification. If they had any integrity, all of them inside of there, who would have been arguing against this thing for such a long period of time, for years back, would have come out and made their position heard. But we do not have that type of integrity. We just have men towing party line when they are on record as being, you know, of advocating the exact opposite. And that, in my view, is extremely shameful. I see the Attorney General, they carry that clip on there. Of course, we don't sit on the Parliament to listen to him because we don't want to hear nothing that he has to say. He has lost the moral authority, in my view, to sit in that Parliament based on his Miami activities. And, you know, we'll get to that in a little while as well. But, you know, I heard it carried on the news that he's saying he's ashamed and he free opposition and so on. He's talking about the opposition behavior. You ashamed for us, I shame for you. I shame for you, Mr. Armour, Senior Counsel. In fact, you know, the other members of the Senate bench, they admonish me all the time. Say, Gil, you were singing this man praises. When they moved Faris Alwari and they appointed Mr. Armour as the Attorney General, I was the first one to say, I said, fellas, listen, there's a real Senior Counsel now, you know. It's not this kind of, I mean, we used to say Alwari like a law student and all kind of thing, but I feel it was better off with Alwari. What I see in here now.
But added to that, if I am trying to wonder within my mind, is it a case where the Attorney General did not do his homework to know that there was a judgment against this piece of legislation, that it was illegal? And if so, why would you want to bring back that same piece of legislation that a judgment was already passed, knowing that the same outcome would be forthcoming in relation to the legality of the bill?
He has done his homework because he mentioned it in his contribution. He tried to gloss over it. And the reason why they're doing it, Victor, is quite simply this. I mean, I'm not inside their head, but the only reason I can foresee them trying to do this is because they need to do something. The crime is out of control, and nothing they have done so far has produced any result. They are just devoid of ideas. So they need to have something to show the population that they are really doing something. If you read the Guardian editorial, I think it is today, the Guardian, they're a little late on the draw, but they eventually realized that they had to say something. They came out and said, well, look, we look forward, a very soft editorial. They said, well, we look forward to seeing what the government is going to come with next. Because, you see, this was their band-aid, and it is a gaping wound. Right? And when I talk about it before, I said they have failed so many on the social side. So what they are doing is they have created a society that is ripe for criminal activity. They have not given law enforcement the resources they need to detect crime and to solve crime and to convict people of a crime. And then the third aspect of it now is that they have nothing in place to rehabilitate offenders. So we like hamsters spinning on a wheel, going wrong and wrong and wrong. Crime committed, detection rate is only about 30%, if so much. It is about less than 20% with murders, but with other crimes it's about 30%. So 3 in 10 criminals, 3 in 10. If 10 people were to get robbed, chances are only 3 cases the police will arrest somebody.
I believe was yesterday yesterday actually we were speaking about the social aspect, and in order to deal with crime it must be a holistic approach where we have the social service involved, we have Ministry of Sport, Ministry of Education, because what we have seen in this country is more or less a strong hand approach to the crime situation. And when you have a prime minister who will come blatantly and tell you that, look, I support the one shot, one kill policy, it tells you that the government really run out of ideas, because in order to fix the crime problem, it's not about more guns and more ammunition and more police car, while some of those apparatus will be welcome. But it must be an approach where we able to bring everybody on board, we sit together, look at the way forward to deal with this crime situation, put some rehabilitation programs in place,
of course,
especially within the prison system.
Crime is not a 5-year cyclical problem that could be solved. You need a long-term approach, and as I said, I went all the way back to baby grants. It starts with whether or not you are you know the type of home that you come from, whether families are staying together. How many families you think have broken up because of the strain and the stress of the financial burden caused by the pandemic, coupled with the downturn in the economy, coupled by so many things? When those things happen, it affects the family life, it affects the background. So you have children coming up now. During the pandemic, we heard about how many children were not logging on to school, something like 2,000. When you have 2,000 school children who for 2 years never attended school because they had no laptop, they had no device, their mother trying their best to try to get a little end somewhere, the father probably working like asphalt, kneeling down on the road begging for his salary, and that is the situation that children are in, and they're not attending school. Where do you expect them to end up? So it starts from there. It starts from when you cut sport programs. I'm glad you raised sports. Sports is actually one of the best ways to keep children out of a life of crime, because it gives you an alternative. Even if you come from a home where there's poverty and there's you don't have maybe the same educational access to educational opportunities, and you don't go to the best schools or whatever, if you get into a really good sporting program, it keeps you away from those criminal elements. But we are creating a situation now where the gangs who want people to work as their little foot soldiers, they could have a variety of people to choose from, because children are, quite frankly, not getting an education. They are not being put back on a straight and narrow path by a coach somewhere. I mean, Anil is the man who will talk about ad nauseum about how much sport can have a really positive impact on your life. David Nackett as well, you know. And these are fellows who are out there trying their best to work with the youth and so on. And when we were in government, we were doing it. That's why we built aquatic center. That's why we built the tennis center. That's why we have the cycling center. We wanted to promote sport more than anything else as a government, because we understood the impact it would have. And yes, and you're touching on it. It is because, you see, crime has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you have to holistically approach all of it. You have to approach the beginning, which is the before, the prevention aspect of it. You have to approach the middle, which is the detection and the solving of crime and the justice system and convicting people. And then you have to deal with the third aspect of it, which is the rehabilitation, because nobody is going to stay in prison forever. Nobody stay in jail forever. You know, if whether they do 7 years or 10 years or 9 months or whatever it is, sooner or later these people are coming back out into society. Are they going to be able to access jobs? Are they going to be able to go and complete any kind of education? Are they learning sufficient skills? Are there jobs out there for them? They don't have enough jobs for people who never went to prison, far as people who went to prison. You understand? So you have to have things in place. Are they psychologically in a place where they would not be likely to reoffend? When you keep a man sleeping with 10 other men in a 10 by 10 cell for 6 years in prison to serve his term, or waiting on his day in court in remand yard, and then you release him out of prison, Do you think what you are sending out someone into society who is bitter? Look at this guy, Akili Charles, right? People say that we fight for bail for a murderer. We never fight for bail for a murderer, you know. Akili Charles, after waiting 9 years for the preliminary inquiry to be completed in his matter, which is the first stage to say whether or not you have just what you call a prima facie case. The court said no, there is not sufficient evidence, and they throw out the matter. And they said, thank you, Mr. Charles, you're free to go now. After 9 years of sleeping in a 10 by 10 cell on a 10 piece of carpet on the floor with a slop pail in the corner, which is a plastic bucket that 10 men using as a toilet. They put that man back out into society and tell him, yes, go, don't reoffend, okay? And if he reoffended, they will say, oh, 1 shot, 1 kill for him. I was the Prime Minister, I'm ashamed to say he supported 1 shot, 1 kill when we have a situation where three youths were shot in their back over the weekend. Do you see that one? Well, 3 young people.
Actually, I was reading earlier on where Keith Scotland, speaking about, he looked at on the Monday at the protests, and what he saw were children who should be in school,
right,
on fiery protests, and he gave an example of himself, and he was so concerned, and it really bothered him that these children who ought to be in school was at the protest. And my question to Keith Scotland will be twofold. One, why are these people protesting? Also, the idiotic Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines, said that on a newspaper article that I read earlier on too, that he have information that the protest was fluid and paid.
Well organized and well financed.
Right,
and stop short of saying it's the UN.
And saying it's us, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, Hines is a big idiot in that ministry, because Hines have failed in every ministry.
Victor, all I have to say, I always say we have to give Jackie jacket. The man is consistent. He's a consistent failure.
Right.
He is the most consistent man in government. But let me ask you something. If you as the Minister of National Security thinks that an incident having happened on Saturday night it happened, and by Monday the opposition, who have no power in this country, could finance and organize such a well-orchestrated thing, when you are the Minister of National Security, you in charge of the NOC, you in charge of the intelligence of this country, you in charge of what, and the opposition could do that around you, well then you are just admitting that you are a failure.
Yeah, you get the caller, try it one. Person on? Welcome caller, good night. Good evening.
Good night, Honorable Senator Jayanti, Mr. Yu, Robert, your listeners. This is tomato, sopa, tahina, and tadaruti. A question to the Honorable Senator, and it is something close to me. I have a passion for corrective action and preventive action. That is my competency and my background. In the Senate, I saw a senator brought into the debate 2 appeal court judges. I think you were part of the slam on that. I want to know, why has that not been resolved as yet? And what avenue is there in the Parliament, outside the Parliament, to resolve it if the Chief Justice has not been able to give a resolution to it? So I am thinking, where is that committee, the privileged committee? Why haven't we called, or you all, or the Parliament should be able to clean up their own mess? Bring the gentleman forward and ask him the question. If he is proven to be right, people intervene from the judiciary, then those appeal court judges must be sanctioned. If the senator was unjust and playing the fool, then he must be sanctioned, because this is where I'm going. I saw at the ending of the debate, I think they want to pass some resolution to
talk about behavior.
Yes. You understand where I'm going? If you passing that behavior of that particular person could be questionable. The other issue is, are you passing that and you're giving particular rules? For example, We have an AG now in the Senate with questionable behavior. How does he put it to that? We have a senator bringing the judges into the political guile. So these are issues, I believe, if we don't get it right as a country, if we don't get our organization who is in the forefront of moving this country forward, then we're in real trouble. Go on and have a nice night, and I'll listen to you off here.
Thank you very much. I want to, I'm glad that people haven't forgotten that issue where Senator Vera said that he was communicating with some Court of Appeal judges and so on, about me, incidentally. And that's the other issue that it all ties together, and I'm so happy to hear that somebody is listening and paying attention, and I hope more people are paying attention to this, because this government wants you to trust them to handle the issue of crime. This government thinks that you must trust them with all of these things, but this government has been interfering with every independent institution, and not just that. The genesis of that issue where the independent senator said that he was talking to two judges in the Court of Appeal was when we were trying to bring a motion against the president for her role and so on, or to begin an investigation into what had transpired with the Police Service Commission and the withdrawal of the merit list. And of course, that would have exposed the interference of Keith Rowley, which at the time he didn't confess to. He later confessed that he was the one who had spoken to, that he was the high-ranking public official who had spoken about the issue and all that, because it appears that he wanted to get rid of Gary Griffith, right? Now, this is becoming a habit that they have. But Caller, the thing about it is that the opposition, there's an expression I would say, the opposition does have its way, but the government will the opposition have its say, but they will have their way. And what we could do is talk, and that's why I am here on a Friday night. It's not that I have nothing to do, but I am here talking about these things because I want people to listen. I want them to understand, because when that election bell ring, the power to do something about all of these things is right here. All the power to treat all of them, from Police Service Commission interference to Delcy Rodriguez and that whole racket that happened there, to all the issues with them, Inez Gate, everything. And now with Reginald Armour and his act of what we call perjury in the Miami courts representing the state of Trinidad and Tobago, all of those things could only really truly be resolved if you get those people out of office. And that is something that we cannot do alone. We depend on you, the voters in this country, to wake up and realize how shameful, how disgraceful, how illegal the actions of this government are, how they have refused to act in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is something that I really want to reiterate.
Welcome,
with respect to, yes.
Hello, good evening.
Good afternoon.
Good evening to the lovely lady in the studio, and as well as the gentlemen. Good evening to Trinidad and Tobago.
Why call
You're talking about voting with finger. We mightn't even get to vote in 2025. The way how I see things going, because everybody like the devil thief their soul. It's a long time I know the radio station and the TV station, and them in stupidness. It's only a matter of time before they show the true colors.
Correct.
They want to be led by the devil just for a fistful of dollar.
Correct.
So let them go down the road if they want to go down the road. And this man say he ruling the country with dignity when he and the cabinet doesn't have any character at all. So how they ruling with dignity? Even a baby in kindergarten could see what they're doing in this country. You understand? I don't understand what they're doing at all. If they can't run the country, just move from there. They're handing everything, they're corrupting everything. So let nobody don't look out for election in 2025 because they're doing just what they want. So I don't see how we run in this country with dignity. You know what is dignity? When you don't have any character? Have a good night.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Caller. And I mean, that hit the nail on the head, that they have no authority, moral authority, to talk about dignity and character when they have none. The fact that Foster Cummings and Reginald Armour are still sitting down in a PNM cabinet shows that this Prime Minister has no respect for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. He has no dignity, and they have no shame to still be sitting down there. Imagine we have now acknowledged that the report that I spoke about is a valid, authentic report from the special branch who have conducted an investigation and has said that a minister of government sitting there in your cabinet right now might have been involved in certain activities and is getting contracts and is involved in like land grabbing and the links to gang and all kind of things. All of those things are there in the report. I didn't write the report. The man want to carry me in court and get injunction against me and all kind of thing. I didn't write the report. Is the police write that report about him? And you refuse to move him? I mean, I see people focusing a lot on the plagiarism and all of that. Now, the reason why I raised that with you was just to show that, look, the man has lacked integrity for a long time. It appears that the man has really lacked, you know, a moral compass for some time. And when you start small like that, in terms of cheating and so on, and that was why we made that point, you know, the political leader made a point of that, look, these people do not have integrity, and it didn't start now when they went to government, it started way back when.
Yeah, and there's more information to come, because
of
actually
course,
we have been spoken to two individuals who a matter of fact, both of them is seeking asylum in a foreign jurisdiction. And of course, you will be shocked and surprised to know some of the things that is being said and some of the allegations that is coming out from those individuals in respect to a sitting minister, a senior cabinet official in government. And when you have the prime minister, when you have a prime minister of a country, but you see, before I say that, let me say this. I have always known that integrity within the prime minister was a problem. Because when I want to go back to the A&V situation, and when you have someone who is the main subject of an investigation, and the prime minister could take up a phone from wherever he was in America and did not call his attorney general, did not call his line minister at the time, did not even speak to his attorney general, and call the subject of the investigation and have a conversation as to, according to the prime minister, what is this I am hearing, and come publicly and send a message to the public by saying, I call my friend, that's my friend. And if I didn't call my friend to find out what is this I'm hearing, then what kind of friend would I be? But first, we want you to understand, Mr. Prime Minister, that before friend, you have to respect your office. And your office as the Prime Minister, you have appointed the board in Petrotrade. You have appointed the chairman in Petrotrade. Why didn't you call your board members? Why didn't you call your chairman? Why didn't you call your Minister of Energy? Why would you come to the public domain and send that message out that Bash is your friend and you call your friend? Was it a case to send a message to the public, hands off because that is your friend? I don't know, I am asking. Because that alone lacked any morality
and integrity.
You have brought the office of the Prime Minister to a level that we have never seen in this country. You have decimated and degraded that office down to nothing. And that is why you must be held accountable.
And then, on top of that, when the arbitration judgment came out, which is just over a year ago, I think it was around this time last year, I remember we were on parliamentary break. When A&V Drilling won the arbitration and there was this big uproar as to the amount of money the government would then have to pay to A&V Drilling, and the question was asked, well, why is it not being appealed? The lawyer, the senior counsel, who was retained to represent the state and to represent Petrotrade in that matter, Mrs. Deborah Peake, wrote an opinion saying that she believed the thing to be wrong.
Pages
and that it should be, and forthwith, that was the words she used, I believe, forthwith it should be appealed and so on. And she said that they are already trying to get their money, they're making applications and so on for payments, so go quickly and appeal the matter. They just decided, they say they have an opinion and they're not going to do it. I think we have a caller.
Welcome, caller.
Good night again, Mr. Robertson.
Go ahead, Salaroti, go ahead.
Let me ask a question aloud. The parade issue, there was another friend who is chairman of parade issue. I want to know if a call was made to that person because the night he came in, he had ideas and he did not say to answer any person. And I believe, from my vantage, because they are friends, there was some sort of communication. Go on, have a nice night.
And you may very well be right, but from where we sit, we have to deal with the facts. And if we doesn't have that factual information, we would not be in a position to say yes or no, a call was made. But you may be right. You may be right, because if we want to utilize the example with the A and V situation, then you may very well be right. But from where we sit, we cannot say. But you see, there is something more to it than that. While finding out if a phone call was made is important, at the same time, today there is no redress whatsoever for the 4 individuals who lose their life in that barrier issue.
Now we're going to September, they're going to start the inquiry. But apart from the Commission of Inquiry, where is the report of the police? Where is the report from OSHA? Well, I think OSHA, I don't know if anybody's still working there, because we only hear about resignation and resignation.
Have a next call? Yeah. All right, welcome, caller.
Hello. Hello, good night. Hello, good
night. Yeah, caller,
yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, good night.
Yeah, we having no audio, boy, on the television. No audio at all.
All right, we will check it out, caller. We will check that out.
Okay.
Thanks for your call. So we have a situation where... Welcome, caller.
Good night, good night, Anthony. This is the Silver.
Nice Silver Fox?
Yes, a Fox inside.
Go ahead, Fox.
Now, we have to understand who we deal with. I am at Tobican, Rowley is at Tobican. And that fella history is not good. And Rowley don't want to rule Trinidad and Tobago. Rowley come destroy it. Rowley is everything to destroy it, and when he leave us, there nothing on this land. All we will have is sea, water, and sand when Rowley does it us. Right? It's alleged. You see, Rowley is a Joseph. It's alleged. It's alleged. Right? And he called Keith Christopher Rowley. Right? Rowley is not a good person to deal with. He will laugh, and inside he don't like nobody. Rowley don't like black people. You don't have to understand that black people, Rowley does not like you all. Rowley will get all hawkish to you all. And all your Trinidad and Tobago, we have to get up and move this man out of office. We will not have no election to go to again. It's going to leave Rowley to 2025. I am seeing it from this side. Rowley is a dictator. Rowley is a dictator for Trinidad and Tobago. And all you have to understand the only way to move. Look Scotland, right? He's saying he break his heart to see how the children and them not in school. What again break his heart? What again break his heart?
When you hang up, I will tell you what else break his heart. As you hang up.
I got talk now. The such a children have been bugged. Why is that a breaking his heart? Why is that a breaking his heart to hurt the children and them? Children and them crying for us here every night and here, and we making this happen. Where is our belly in Trinidad and Tobago? Where is our belly? Look how long Auntie Camilla saw calling for us to be out there. But no, we want her out there. We're afraid to go by herself. What is wrong with us? Look the children and them. How much of them fail? Look how much fail. What we are doing, Trinidad and Tobago, I don't know what again to tell all you. I don't know what again. Oh God, what again to tell all you. Everybody have done it. I know what to tell again. Oh God, get up.
Thank you, Fox.
You know, it brings you back to the point that one thing Nicola said. You hear this government, when they do talk, they talk about opportunities for business to grow and all of that. But how many times you hear them talking about opportunities for poor people? I hear Mr. Scotland talking about it paying him to see children not in school. I want to ask Mr. Scotland, you know if the children and them have food to eat? You know if the children getting water in the tap to be able to bathe, to go to school? You know if the children have money to pay for transport? Everything in this country is people crying out for money. Look at how much money they were owing the maxi taxi drivers who were doing school transport. Them and all begging for money. I know some of those people who had to sell their maxi taxis because it just wasn't profitable again. They couldn't pay for the maxi. Some of them had mortgage on the bank that they used to buy the maxi. Government refused to pay them for the transport that they had already done for years. They had 2 years and thing outstanding for them. They're selling it out. So children don't even have transport to go to school. This government is not concerned about people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. They're concerned with creating more wealth at the top of the pyramid, and that is the problem that we are having in this country.
And while you're on that subject, Senator, in relation to Keith Scotland telling us how it hurt him to see those children at the fiery protests and they were supposed to be in school. I want to ask you a question here tonight, Mr. Scotland. What about the children in these homes that is being raped and abused? That ain't bothering you? That ain't bothering you, Mr. Scotland? How you feel about those children who crying as we speak, coming out of the Judith Jones report, crying as we speak with the abuse, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, the mental abuse, all the abuse that is being placed on those children, while your Prime Minister and your Minister in the Minister of the Prime Minister, Ayanna Webster Roy, who will have that report shelved for over 5 to 6 months, while the abuse continue even today. I want to ask you, Mr. Scotland, how you feel. You tell me how you feel, and I leave that there for now.
You know, Amor comes to tell us about how people have repeat offenders and so on, and the court denying them bail. But you know, you probably have some repeat offenders, you know, right now in those children's homes, right? Repeating all the offenses that they talk about in the Judith Jones report. And what the police say, well, they can't just go in and ask what's going on. They're waiting for the adults to come to them. You read that article?
Yeah.
I said, well, this is madness. You have an actual report produced by a committee appointed to investigate, and then Amor coming to tell us you need a bill to block bail and so on, and he disappointed in us. Mr. Amor, let me tell you something. I am so disappointed in you. I am so disappointed in you that as a senior counsel, taking up the role and the mantle of Attorney General, the second most senior cabinet position in this country. You have not only disgraced us here, but abroad. You have gone to the court in Miami. You know, let us spend some time just not talking about that, Victor, because I think we cannot allow the population to lose sight of the seriousness of that matter. But apart from that, I mean, even if that was just a one-off thing, but in your everyday actions, every time you come to that parliament, you are a disappointment. You are a sore disappointment to me and to many other people in this country. Because when we expect to hear some sense coming out of you, you talk about this judgment does not apply. You don't understand that, you know, the same principle that applies in one case will apply to another case. You don't understand that how the law has evolved with respect to bail. You just flip your position from when you were in law association and cannot even tell us why, except, well, I don't know, because Rowley put me here, so I'm saying so now. You understand? Well, let me talk about that Miami thing a little bit. Let me remind you all of what happened. Reginald Amor said that he was on holiday and he was asked to put in an affidavit, and that when he signed the affidavit, he forget that he was not a note taker and a junior counsel, but that how involved he had been in the Piaco 1 inquiry when he was representing Brian Quaitong and others. Nice. Man say he forget. All right, okay. Let me give him the benefit of the doubt. Let me say he forgets. You know what he came out afterwards with his second statement and said? That when he saw the affidavit filed by Quaitong in response to him, annexing all the submissions that he signed as senior counsel, annexing all the proceedings from the magistrate courts and showing where he was cross-examining a witness and he was actively involved in the matter, he said, oh, it's only then I remember, you know. And I wanted to correct it, you know, and I don't know who he tell, if he tell Faris or who he tell. But we have exposed the lie, because nowhere on the record, you have a transcript of all proceedings that happened before a court. Nowhere in the transcript, does it show that Reginald Armour, he wasn't even on the link. He said he waited in his hotel room whole day and he was never on. He wasn't on the link. Faris Al-Rawi was on the link. The lawyers retained by the state, Sequel Law, they were on the link. And nobody ever said, well, listen, Judge, you know what? Mr. Armour has now realized, based on the evidence filed, that he made a mistake and he wants to file an affidavit to correct it. Can't we have that opportunity?
Yeah.
So you, as the Attorney General of this country, sat down in your hotel room somewhere in Europe. Faris Al-Rawi, as the former Attorney General and a Minister of Government and a lawyer, by the way, although that's, you know, we sort of question that sometimes, but he says he's a lawyer, we believe him, we give him the benefit of the doubt too. He sat down there in that courtroom and knowing that there was false evidence before the court filed on behalf of the state of Trinidad and Tobago, and all let us let that pass, just so?
But is it a conspiracy? Is it a conspiracy that these people willfully conspired to allow that matter to go down the drain?
Well, I am very concerned that, because listen, there's a level of ineptitude and incompetence that you could say might be understandable, but this level of ineptitude and incompetence from two senior lawyers really, in my respectful view, seems quite strange and seems very impossible. So it raises more questions than answers. But let me take it one step further. After the court ruled now and said, listen, Sequel Law, you have had communications with this man who is obviously convicted, you out. Reginald Armour, you are out, disqualified. You have two developments. You have the Attorney General trying to take front when the media contact him for a statement initially, saying he recused himself. And you have Keith Rowley coming now in the face of all the evidence, in the face of the transcript, in the face of everything that has developed while he was hiding in America somewhere, or I don't know what he was doing in America. All the evidence now in the public domain, he said, well, that's not my understanding. Well, he had to be illiterate if that's not his understanding, that the court disqualified. The court order says that they are disqualified.
Well,
so he's picking up for them.
Don't blame Keith Rowley when he said that is not his understanding, because from his disposition and his judgment and the way in which he articulates things, it tells you that he really doesn't have an understanding.
His judgment may be somewhat impaired, yes.
Right.
That's
so
true.
why would you as a Prime Minister allow your Attorney General, your appointed Attorney General, to belittle, to embarrass not only Trinidad and Tobago, but as far as I'm concerned, the whole of CARICOM. And yet to the end of the day, you would take that position
and defend it.
To defend it, yes. Something is wrong. Something is wrong.
And let's talk about the appeal too when we take this caller.
Welcome, caller. Caller, before you speak, we want to minimize the time limit in which you call, right? So we will give you about a minute to make your point, and we want to give everybody the opportunity to call you. So go ahead.
I was watching Parliament when Mr. Michel Franco tell Hines, boy, when you get up from there, why you resign? But that was a big joke. He had Modilar.
Correct. And you remember when he was speaking to the Alsing and they said, doctor, he said he want a real doctor. I say, remember that? Okay. So we want to really understand where we going with this government. Where we really going, because you cannot allow an Attorney General to behave the way in which our Attorney General behave and still allow him to sit on the chair as Attorney General.
And before the caller came on, I wanted to tell you that after all of that and after the disqualification and after now admitting that he realized the day before the hearing that he had filed inaccurate evidence and never corrected it before the hearing, they're going and they appeal the matter now. So now there's an appeal pending before the court in Florida with false evidence.
False evidence. Go ahead, caller.
Good afternoon, Mr. Roberts.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
And a very special good afternoon to Senator Jayanti.
Good afternoon.
It is such a pleasure hearing you here this afternoon explaining that bail bill. Because we were having too many ignorant voices, you understand, and not enough knowledge about what it is was going on. Here now, the amount of nonsense we were hearing about the opposition and this bail bill. And I hope all those who were voicing their dotish opinions, I hope that they will listen this afternoon.
Yeah.
You understand? Now, Mr. Roberts,
Yes, ma'am.
You just said something there that really, it made me sit up and think. This man is concerned about the children who were out there. And as you rightly said, he's not concerned about the children in the homes. And he's even not concerned that Paula Gopiskun is telling us not until March next year that the homes will be licensed. These people have no shame. According to Senator Jayanti, like they lose something when they get into Balite House. Like they have to sign a contract to drop all their... You understand, to drop all their responsibilities and everything and just follow the PNM lead. I don't know what is going on wrong with these people. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys, and have a good night.
Thank you, Miss Santa Cruz.
I don't feel like enough people listening, but I'm seeing notifications coming up here. Somebody commenting on my Facebook page on one of the articles where I said it's wrong to put somebody in jail, before the trial and so on. He said, but it was good when all it was in government and so on. I want to repeat it again. After 2019, after the opposition had passed laws about bail and so on, right? There is a judgment from the court handed down this year, 2022, that says Parliament shouldn't interfere with bail. 2022, not 2015, not 2010 to 2015, not when Kamala was Prime Minister, not even the first term of the PNM. All that time, nobody challenged it in the courts. The court has come out now in 2022, and the law of the land today in Trinidad and Tobago, that it wasn't so last year, it wasn't so the year before, it wasn't so when Kamala was Prime Minister, it wasn't so when Manning was Prime Minister, it wasn't so ever before, is that the government and the Parliament is not supposed to interfere with bail. Please try your best, people, before you're coming on my page to write stupidness. Understand what I am talking about. I ain't gonna call your name, but I see in your comments.
Welcome, caller.
Yes, good afternoon. I'll be brief. What happened recently, and to the Senator also good evening. Recently there was a drug bust made where there is somebody spent over $1 million to bring in a particular, what I call date rape drug. That is a predator's drug. Now, a lot could be learned about who wants to buy and use $1 million worth in date rape drug. Now that drug, it interferes with memory and so on. So that if you question somebody tomorrow after, they can't remember what happened yesterday.
Right.
So it is a very good...
Ketamine, yeah.
Yes, to find out who is bringing in these drugs.
Thank you, caller.
What has $1 million?
Caller, that's an interesting point, because again, the fact that these things are coming into the country is very worrying. We don't know who is bringing it in, who want to use it, what are their intentions, and worse yet, we don't know if the police will make any headway on customs with being able to identify it. But the problem we have here in this country is that these things come up, we hear about it in the news, and then they somehow fall off the radar. Whatever happened to the US dollars in the plyboard? What has happened to all these different things? We don't hear any results of this investigation. What they can't tell us is that we need to throw people in prison and deny them bail because, and that is solved crime. And
just a word, there are those who will never choose to understand what we say. So don't waste time with them. There are those, let me tell you something. One called the other day and he said something about I is the worst nigger or whatever. That is strength for me, because some of them are being paid to do what they're doing on social media. Some of them intends to interrupt the program. So them waste their time. But I want to make this point. We have, and Senator make a very pertinent point there with those investigations. We have had a $143,800 investigation going on in relation to community women's wages. Today, all you will hear is investigation continuing. We also have investigations where documents surface, where Faris Alwari allegedly conspire with some Nelson and cut a deal with Nelson, where no form of prosecution will come to him, whether he lie or he ain't lie, on two former UNC senators. We hear investigation continuing. We have an investigation where a car from Faris Alwari was not allegedly transferred to the man who buy it, some member of the police service or ex-member of the Police Service Commission. Today, all we hear, investigation continuing. We have had Keith Rowley $400,000 off from apartments in Tobago. We ain't even hearing of an investigation going on. We have Foster Cummins, 4.4 million in a credit union sitting there. All we hearing, investigation continuing. And this is the game by what I am considering to be a PNM acting police commissioner. That anything, because I noticed Fitzgerald Hines said that the police was so informed to keep their eyes on who he believed pay for the protests in Beetham Gardens. And you see, when a police commissioner takes instruction from the politician, that is what is happening to us today. You know, we are hook up, hang up as a 2x4 country, because every independent institution in this country, it is contaminated by the influence of the Prime Minister. We have had the president, the highest office holder in this land, who could teach us, who could lecture to us on constitutional laws, and yet to the end of the day allow herself to be manipulated by this high-ranking politician to play seesaw with the meritless, 1 minute in here, 1 minute in there, and have the collapse of the entire Police Service Commission. And today, when the UNC raised concerns within the parliament, we have another independent so-called Senator Vera, who make it publicly known that he was in telephone communications with some judges, whether the appeal court judges and so on, in relation to what they consider inappropriate behavior by senator and others. And we in this country sit down and accept that kind of behavior as a population, and then we want to blame the crime situation on whether it be the opposition or those who would not agree to breach people's constitutional rights according to section 4, 5 and 6 of our constitution. But to the end of the day, we have a whole cabinet who recuse themselves, who breach every aspect of constitutional of our constitution. And to the end of the day, everybody quiet, including the Law Association. I know my good senator on this side have respect for the Law Association and the judiciary. But me, Victor Roberts, I have no respect for y'all. Because until the Chief Justice of this country could pull Senator Vera to find out who was the judges that he spoke to that had political interference, until that happened, and the Chief Justice, I know that the leader of the opposition wrote to the Chief Justice on that matter, and today we will never get an answer. And today I will tell you why. You know why? We will not get an answer simply because of the political interference and the respect, the interference by the Prime Minister of this country in relation to every independent institution in this country.
I'll give you one more example. You heard this week that the Privy Council, last week it was, the Privy Council handed down a decision in the Piarco 1 matter. The DPP says he has to consider now whether or not he wants to restart the matter. Everybody knows it's within the DPP's remit. Before the DPP can make a statement, you have the junior Attorney General jumping up with opinion and saying, we get opinions, we have opinions, trying to influence on all the independent office of the DPP.
But you know,
the DPP is supposed to make that decision. You come in to say that other legal people give opinions to say the matter could go forward. That they're out of place.
Senator, today I read in a document where the magistrate said that she get instructions
to resume Piarco 3.
Piarco 3.
It was, yeah.
Right. But Sunday I will deal with that. And that is the problem we have in, because I am calling into question certain aspects in relation to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, because I have seen that when this alleged document came out with Faris Alwari, with Nelson, Queen's Counsel convicted Nelson in relation to 2 former senators, the DPP came out and said that, look,
he was not aware of it.
I am the only man that have authority to enter into any bargain, and I was not aware of this document. But today, we hear absolutely nothing else.
And I try to stay away from this topic for obvious reasons, but I have to say this. That document, which everybody chose to just remain silent of, and you know, this thing about government ministers when faced with allegations and so on, choosing to adopt a vow of silence like they're in a monastery or something, is unacceptable. Because you are supposed to answer to the people, but they have remained silent about it. But the fact of the matter is that it appears in the public domain that this immunity agreement was a sort of an inducement being offered to a man who would then turn out to be the only witness against two UNC senators. And if that, and the fact that that was done without the knowledge, consent, and input of the Director of Public Prosecutions, it brings the credibility of that witness into serious question. It does. And that is an uncomfortable conversation that nobody wants to have. The DPP does not want to talk about it. The government think that they must just adopt a vow of silence, because you see, they rely on what we call a 7-day memory of Trinidadians. By next week, something else happens and we forget about it. By next week, they'll have our next think and dirty fete, and everybody go to the party. I'm not against party, you know, but I'm just trying to say, right? At the end of the day, those things distract us. Now, as soon as Piaco won't get kicked out, all of a sudden they're ready to restart Piaco 3.
Let me get this
Distraction.
Let me get this one that I know you are aware of also. We have had a matter where a senior legal advisor to the TTPS, that is Mr. Christian, I always forget his last name, Chandler. And we have seen where the DPP came out in a statement that when he was forced by Ravi Balgobin Chu, Senior Counsel, Anand Ramlogan, the DPP who did not want to, let me take back that. The DPP who did not answer the question. It took a threat of judicial review for the DPP to answer 4 questions after 7.5 months. Coming out of that, the DPP said that he did not give any advice, nor was he aware that the Attorney General had given the police advice in a criminal matter.
And all of a sudden, we have always had a Ministry of the Attorney General, which included a criminal law department, which is the DPP, civil law department, the Chief State Solicitor, the Solicitor General, and so on, going on the road, the people who do the drafting. All of a sudden, in the Attorney General Secretariat, they've created some kind of criminal justice unit. Okay, fine. If they have to deal with the reform of the laws and whatever, that's what they're supposed to be doing. But they're writing opinion to advise the police who to charge and who not to charge. Could you imagine that?
And this is what I'm saying. Where are we?
And who is dealing with those issues? That in itself is the same thing when the Ocean Pelican matter. He didn't get nobody to write an opinion. He picked up the phone and called the station. And I have asked the Commissioner of Police, the Acting Commissioner of Police, to investigate that matter, because that in itself, if you as the Attorney General picking up a phone whatever hour of the night to call a police station and to intervene and to give your interpretation of the law, a police officer made a diary entry in the Carenage police station that showed the diary must be gone missing by now, and that officer must be just transferred from Carenage to, I don't know, Toko or CJUS or something, right? We must find him, Victor. We must go and look for him. We have the name, and that in itself, and the man wrote down, he made a contemporaneous note in a stationery to say that the Attorney General called him and said, based on my interpretation, so this is not an issue and all of that. That is interfering in the administration. That is misbehavior in public office. That is an attempt to pervert the course of justice. The same thing with sending an opinion to the police on whether or not Christian Chandler should be charged or not. I'm not saying Chandler guilty or anything, you know. What I am saying is that it's not your place. Stay in your lane. And that is what they are supposed to do.
The DPP is still telling us that he...
And only under the threat of judicial review, you are right. He has come out and said, no, well, he didn't ask for it and he didn't say it. Why did it take that for you to come out and say so?
So, in my opinion, it has to be something that is hiding. Because a simple question, 4 simple questions. Hey, you get instructions in relation to this matter? Yes or no? Were you aware that such and such? But you sit down as the DPP, as the Director of Public Prosecution, the man with the sole responsibility, the man who is to advise the police whether to charge or not to charge, or if it needs further investigation. How the Attorney General reach in this criminal matter to give police advice as to whether to charge under the public health or not.
And at the end of the day, what happens when the DPP's office, I have great respect for the DPP, I have great respect for that office where I came from, where I started from, and I know that they are very hardworking, but they have to understand something. Public confidence in the independence of the office of the DPP is very important. And when it takes a threat of judicial review and legal action to compel you to say something that is unfavorable to the government,
it taints the whole office.
It taints your office.
Exactly.
And it gives the population the impression that you don't want to expose, that you do not want to expose the wrongdoing of the office of the Attorney General, because that's what it was.
That is
it
what
was
it
an
is.
attempt to interfere in the police being able to do their work, and rather than expose them and come out and say that there was an attempt to influence the police, there was an attempt to cut a deal with Nelson, there was an attempt to interfere in the investigation with the Ocean Pelican, there was an attempt to investigate to interfere in the investigation into Christian Chandler and to prevent charges from being brought. You choose to remain silent. Silence is not an option.
Look, we have one of Keith Rowley, good friend, Damian Lane, good friend of Keith Rowley. I see them pose up in all kind of picture, right? Good friend. We are now hearing that two senior police officers, whether retired or what,
call the
station and demand the release. If it's me,
an
I don't lock up already.
You don't lock up, they would have remand you without bail long time.
You understand? But you having this, and to the end of the day, yeah, we have the Commissioner of Police like a toothless bulldog.
And he has not said anything about whether or not he's investigating that. We have a caller? No.
We have nothing. 27 guns, 800 rounds of ammunition, allegedly found. Right? To the end of the day, we have a police acting commissioner. I call him the police PNM acting commissioner. I call him that. Because, and I'll tell you why I call him that. I call him that. The reason why I call him that is because I have seen in a press conference where the police were having a conference, and I was seeing Fitzgerald Hines actually talking on behalf of the police commissioner.
Well,
or the
when I
acting
tell
commissioner,
the police commissioner, stop being a prop for Hines, and he say, we can't tell him what to say. But the police commissioner has been lobbying, saying that the opposition should support this thing. Did you hear what Independent Senator Paul Richards said when he was debating in the House on this amendment bill?
Of course.
He said he interviewed the Commissioner of Police, and the Commissioner of Police won this. You can imagine the Commissioner of Police went on radio and being interviewed by an independent senator who has to vote on this bill and telling him that you should vote in favor of it? Tell me if that is not the height of insanity that is taking place in this country. And you know, when people say, well, we shouldn't attack the man and say he's a PNM, but you know what the inescapable fact is? Had it not been for the interference of Keith Rowley in the process of appointing a commissioner of police, and the interference with the Police Service Commission and Blissy Prasad, the man would not have been in the position because he was not on the list.
He didn't even apply.
I don't think he applied. I don't know what it is. So he's only there in the post as a result of the direct interference of the PNM in the process to appoint a commissioner of police. And now he's there appearing on press conferences. That is not something that we have seen before, except in cases of, a national emergency, a crisis situation, you have state of emergency and so on, you'll see all the heads of national security appearing in minister. But you don't come on up, what is a political press conference and sit down there like a prop to prop up Hines and if Hines say, well, the sky orange, you say, yes, ban, the sky orange, and the police want the thing, and the and agreeing with everything the government say, you are supposed to be independent, because at the end of the day, wrongdoing by the government must also be investigated by you. So, Mr. Commissioner of Police, tell us what is happening with the investigation into Foster Cummings and the special branch report. What is happening in respect to the investigation into all the money deposited into his account where you all went for production order to the court? What is happening with respect to the allegation that a man who is seeking asylum in the UK has said that a government minister with links to a government, a gang leader wants him dead, and that is why he's seeking asylum. What is happening with the investigation into the failure of Faris Al-Rawi to transfer his vehicle? What is happening in relation to the allegation that Faris Al-Rawi called the police station on the Ocean Pelican thing to interfere?
And
what is happening about the Office of the Attorney General writing that opinion, trying to say that Christian Chandler should not be charged? What is happening about all of these issues? We want answers about all of those things. Don't tell us lock up poor people and put them in jail for 120 days to solve crime. Tell us why you are not investigating crime.
Paula? Yeah. Welcome, Paula.
Hi, good evening again, Mr. Roberts and Senator Jayanti. Senator Jayanti, I want to jog your mind a little bit this evening. Inquiring minds want to know, do you have any information that you can give us concerning an incident that took place with David West's brother-in-law at Movie Town? And he was at the Western Police Station. This happened a couple of years ago. And just like that, it disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. Do you know if that was ever brought to the courts or anything?
I don't know who David West's brother-in-law is, so I cannot say off the top of my head. Of course, you know. So yes. I really don't want to say. I don't know who the person is, and I can't say that I recall hearing about the incident. But what I would say is that if anyone has information that an incident occurred and that the police did not investigate, you know, you should take it to...
Because he was at the Western Police Station for some hours, because even Prakash Ramadan, the time he was in government, because it happened under the partnership government, he was upset and all that. Why should David West go and babysit him for so many hours? And then just like that, we heard nothing again about the case. Just like we are not hearing anything about Stuart Young's stepdaughter case, we don't know what has happened to those cases. Thanks a lot.
I notice every time you know, people affiliated with the opposition have a day in court is widely reported. But when last year Stuart Young's stepdaughter matter being reported, we don't hear nothing more.
I hear not more that. A matter of fact, somebody tell me that she's foreign. I don't know how true that is.
Well, I don't know, but you know, look, all of that comes back to a number of things. But you know, you are right, caller. There are always questions surrounding persons who hold office and how they conduct themselves when it comes to their own personal interests and all of that. And you know, again, like I say, that is why when you hold office like in the judiciary, when you hold office in a place like the Police Complaints Authority, when you hold office in a place like the office of the DPP, public trust and confidence is so important, because when you want to tell people that if they break the law, you want to throw them in jail for 120 days without bail, because that is what going to solve crime, then you must hold yourself up to the standard that we can have respect for you. You cannot be an attorney general who internationally was found to be committing perjury, by confess that you perjured yourself, whether intentionally or not. And as I said, you now have false evidence before a court in Miami or in a matter that is on appeal, but you want to come and lecture to the people of Trinidad and Tobago about obeying the law and solving crime? That it just cannot stand. It simply cannot stand. This do as I say and not as I do type of government simply just will not do. Look, today I appeared in a matter with two fellows who they lock up living right here by the train line in Marabella. The guys and them get together because they're making a list of all who need hampers so they could carry it down to the MP's office to get hampers. You know, police pass and lock up all of them and say they're gathering in a public place in excess of 10, because the yard in which they were gathering in was not fenced yard, and therefore they wanted to, and the police realized a public place and they lock up all of them, right? But you have Faris Al-Rawi who apparently arm wrestling thing without any mask on. You have Keith Rowley saying, oh, you know, I was drinking a beer and I walk outside and whatever. So you have public officials who never comply and who have flaunted the rules for themselves, right? I mean, those things seem minor, right? But it's the standard that you set. If you are flaunting the rules and then you want to impose the strictest of the strict upon everybody else, you want people to obey the law, you have to set the example. You have to set the example. And right now, we have people like Reginald Armour, Foster Cummings, Camille Robinson-Regis, and others who have big question marks and should be having big investigations going on into them. And they are sitting there in the cabinet saying that they are making law to govern the rest of us in this country.
And that is one of the problems that we have in this country. Those who are supposed to set the standard in these offices, they are destroying the credibility of these offices. And because of the lack of respect for law and order by these high-ranking officials, it has now trickled down to the man on the street, because the man on the street believes that, hey, these people is the one who go into the parliament and bring in laws to govern us. And they are not obeying the same laws that they expect us to obey. So therefore, if them ain't obeying, we ain't obeying. And we end up with a lawless society.
Correct.
When you see, for instance, when you see the Prime Minister of this country would defend this Foster Commons situation simply because since 2019 he would have had prior knowledge, because during any screening process, especially within the PNM organization, especially when they are in power, they utilize the special branch for various and sundry reasons. And the Prime Minister would have been aware of these allegations, but yet still you move him, you remove him as senator, and you elevate him, even with these allegations of serious misconduct that is hanging over his head. So what you will want the population to believe? The population will believe that, hey, as long as they don't catch me, it is all right for me to do it.
The thing about this is the population, when you, again, and let's get back to the social issue of crime, the poor and the disenfranchised, those who have lost opportunities for education, those who have lost social support, those who have lost jobs, those who see no real future for themselves, when they're looking on and they're hearing that a minister of government who allegedly has links to gangs depositing $4.4 million in the bank account, what does that say? What does that say? And then you come to tell them, listen, if you get caught, if the police lock you up more than twice, no bail for you. That is the message that the PNM government wants to say. Listen, the government has not shown that they have done anything to alleviate the pain, the stress, the social problems that result in crime in this country. And at the end of the day, that's why I said this is a band-aid over a gaping wound that they have created, because they have dismantled so many things that we had put into place. And again, I say we only had 5 years, but the amount of things we do in 5 years, you can imagine if we had 10 years in government, where this is going to be. We were going to a meeting one night, and we were driving from south, coming up to the north, and everybody was looking, Kamla build that, Kamla build this, Kamla put that there. It's because of Kamla that happened there, this roundabout, this thing. Little things like that, you know, for development of the country. UTT, so Kamla, look at that hospital. Look at that Cuba Children's Hospital that they keep closed for that bad mind. Bad mind, you know. The UTT campus, UE campus in Debe, well, they end up turning into a COVID facility, but they haven't fully operationalized it. Education is the key out of poverty. Our political leader says that all the time. Education, education, education. Focus on the children. When you focus on children from the time they are born, with baby grants and all the other things, and the support for mothers, and better schools and laptops and all of these things, you have less of them going into crime. That is where the answer lies.
So we have over
9,000.
We have over 9,000 children that did not make the mark.
That perform poorly in SCA.
And as I said, some parents want to blame the child. But it's not the child to be blamed in this case, because coming into the pandemic, there was no preparation.
Right.
Coming out of the pandemic, there is still no preparation. We are a government who dismantled every aspect of digital learning in the school system.
And now for our Ministry of Digitalization, I know what I accomplished today.
Right.
But
added to that, these children who could not access the online learning, these children, some could not have also accessed the Wi-Fi. Some of them had no device. At one time, the number was about 65,000 with no device. It come down to 50, then 40 something thousand. To the end of the day, the government had not seen it fit to equip these children, so we wouldn't have had the result that we had in this C exam that go on.
Even with all the devices too, there are children who learn differently.
Right.
There are children who have certain challenges and so on. Within the regular physical school system, those children would have gotten some assistance from a teacher who would be physically there with them. There was also, although it's not perfect, there was a system whereby if you had challenges when you are, maybe slightly on the spectrum and so on, but you're going to a regular school, you could go to Student Support Services Division and you could have an aide sitting with you in the class. They just banned all that during COVID. They said, no schools, send home everybody.
And
they never gave that type of support. So these children who may not be, it's very easy when you're bright to do good. Yeah. You don't need everything. And the bright children are the ones whose parents could pay for extra lessons. Their parents, some of those schools, private schools and so on, they went seamlessly into online learning because all those children they have multiple devices within their homes. But for poor children who maybe, never had a computer in their life, or who may not have been exposed, or who may not live in an area where there's easy access to community facilities, children who do not have parents who could sit with them and teach them, because the parents themselves didn't have opportunities for education, and all of us come from some generation or the other. It was somebody for the first time was going to university, was writing SEA, was going to high school. All of us have come out of that, but there are some people who are still trying to come out of that. So when the poor mother who lost her job working in a casino or in a bar or a restaurant that they closed down, she has no money, she's trying to do whatever she could do to make ends meet, and she cannot help the child sit there and do their homework. The child has no device. Did you expect those children to perform well in SEA? That is the point.
And that is where the vision, this government lacks vision. And if you really look in every aspect, in every ministry, from where it were under Kamala Prasad Bisesa to where we are now, it's a serious drop to about 70%, I would say, spiraling downward. And it seems as like there's no vision, like there's no hope, like there's no, like the PNM just don't know what to do.
Their vision is the rich must get richer, and that's their vision, that it'll trickle down to the poor. We will eat the scraps off of the table of the rich and the wealthy. That's what the poor people are supposed to do if they come out of jail in the 120 days.
So I saw the Prime Minister saying now that, look, we're going to look at for legislation in relation to scrap iron. And you will see very soon what will happen is that just as the marijuana industry, where you give
he's trying to legalize it, but he's going to
3 trees and 30 grams, you will realize that very soon it will be some big conglomerate that will
run the scrap iron industry.
Right, that will run the scrap
big
iron
boys,
industry. And that's where it headed. That's where it headed.
You will push out the small man. What you have to do is enforce the law and regulate it properly. Don't have it with the way it's operating now, but you're right, there's probably some scheme to make sure that one of the big boys could corner the market and will control the whole thing. As we want to talk about education, I want to encourage anybody and everybody who is listening tonight, please go and look for this all over social media and all of that. When Dr. Tim Gopi Singh was the Minister of Education in this country, he launched a project with Samsung called Smart Classrooms. And I want everybody in this country to look at that and to think that had those things not been thrown out the window when the PNM took office, and the laptop program had not been thrown out as well by them, think about how different the pandemic could have been for our children in this country if you had those smart classrooms rolled out all over the country, even if it's not every single school, but you had them in certain schools and they could have been used by teachers to teach and all of that. If you had each child still getting their laptop when they entered secondary school, I want you to simply think about how different the pandemic would have been for all those children. I want you to think about how different the SEA results and the performance in the SEA results would have been today. And you have to understand that when you make your decision about who you want to be governing your country, you have to keep those things in mind.
Right, so actually, you don't forget to put the number on the screen because some people are telling me no numbers.
The Prime Minister making all
welcome, Paula.
Because he have the life in his hand, so he gonna live forever. So let he continue making.
Hi, Tobago.
So let he continue making all them plans, and let the police lock up themselves and lock up the government. Them is the people, and then they're supposed to lock up because all of them have amnesia. They just never remember the things that they just do and they're doing to the people of this country. Bye bye again.
Thank you, Kola. That's
Yes.
the number to support me here. It's
The number, yeah. 373-5488. That's the number.
Right,
Call
373-5488.
It's on the screen now.
Right,
yes.
good.
So you can
And
call.
sorry about that, callers.
Yes. But, you know, and so you have to realize too that when they're talking about, you know, they're doing this, they're doing that. I hear he says they're going to remove, he had one of the most productive meetings recently, and they want to develop trade and all that. But they are not dealing with the problems that affect people on the ground. Food prices, we keep talking about food prices and food security. There was a time when Raul said, look, agriculture will never be profitable in this country.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now they talk about, oh, agriculture, we're giving out land here, there and everywhere about agriculture.
But he said we have no land for agriculture.
He said we don't have enough land
He
to
said
be
that-
commercially viable. Well, it has to be, we have to do something because we cannot afford the import bill, food bill that we have right now. And that is what is causing the economy to suffer.
Welcome, caller.
Good night, Mr. Roberts and Senator.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Madam Senator, the Finance Committee for Appropriation Bill remind the public that when they have to give accountability, they shut it down. So it starts, don't forget the President, the Senate President, and the House Speaker. And when time now to pass legislation, right, to protect the people, they keep it back hiding. It's plain to see that the AV investigation is still going on. They hide it, they put it dormant. So they will get amnesia when coming to their own. And Mr. Roberts, you had heard the 5 kusumusus, right? And in the interpretation, the 5 thiefers, right? And they legitimize everything to the procurement. And when Jacob and them asking for legislation to fight crime, so why they don't ask for the hangman? And the bring back the hangman and the Catalan in jail? Because you see, they don't want that. So, Madam Senator, if they don't have lunches to give the children in school, right? You think they care about the children? Because the pedophile ring have their eyes on them. And it's clear to see, you just say that when they have the eyes, they have a file, and they're doing nothing about it. So they don't care about the vulnerable. They just do it everything, and it's plain, and it's bold-faced. It's plain of misconduct in public office. But they want to say there is Angel Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank you, caller.
So, you know, you call about legislation to fight crime, they want legislation to fight crime. I have another question too for the Acting Commissioner of Police. You don't need no legislation for this, but there was information that we had received that when Gary Griffiths was the Commissioner of Police, he asked for money to hire a forensic, some kind of investigator to deal with the AV drilling matter, to do the reservoir, some kind of reservoir audit or whatever, so that the criminal side of the AV drilling matter could continue, and they never gave them the money. And I don't think that has ever happened. So I want to know the status of the criminal investigation into 2 things, the AV drilling matter and the Paria investigation, because those are 2 more criminal investigations that should be happening, and we're not hearing about it. And you need no legislation, Mr. Commissioner. You don't have to call no press conference and sit down with Ethelbert to ask for legislation. You have all the legislation. What you need is the resources and the manpower and the will to complete those investigations, and we would like to hear from you on what is the status of what in those 2 very important investigations for the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
But here what? While they could not provide the funds to conclude the criminal investigation in AV drilling, they could find $40 million US to give Kate,
SRP Kate,
to try to lock up a UNC member.
Yeah.
You see how the game going?
Yeah.
40 million.
And the police in Trinidad and Tobago, people think that I lie, and I swear on anything, any book you bring, I could swear on it and tell you. I went to the police station one time to represent a client who was arrested for something or the other, and they wanted to print the charge, and I had to go and get paper from home and send somebody in Penal to get paper and bring to the Penal police station or to print the charge. The Penal police station did not even have paper. If you go and you talk to police officers all over this country right now in a CID, I remember one time they had they have a little kitty, everybody chipping in a little money every month, and they're buying ink for the printer, they're buying coffee and tea so that they can have a little something there, they're buying toilet paper so that the prisoners could have toilet paper to use when they have them there detained for questioning and so on. Police officers taking money out of their own pocket to do those things in the police station, but they have $35 or $40 million to give Kate.
Kate, welcome, caller.
Hello, good night.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Robert.
Yes, sir.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, Senator. First of all, let me commend
Actually, I need a little volume.
Let me commend the Senator on her excellent work in the Senate and her contribution over all of our contributions thus far. We have identified numerous issues and misgivings of this government, and one of the ones that have troubled me the most, and the Senator mentioned that she has worked in the office of the DPP.
Mm-hmm.
There are numerous cases that are before the court. There's a young girl who was caught with some drugs and a gun, I believe, and she's related to a minister. And she got bail and she's before the court, and that's going into 4+ years, and we haven't heard anything. And I've been told that the prosecution does the DPP get involved? Why are these cases held back? In addition to that, the issue with the Prime Minister and Bliss and the President,
Mm-hmm.
that was unconstitutional. We have agreed on all of that. But what redress can I, as a citizen, take if I believe that they broke the law?
Right.
And we have again now the AG. As far as I understand it, and you as a legal person, I'm a bush lawyer. When you sign an affidavit, you are basically swearing before a JP or something, saying that what you're putting on that piece of paper is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth. And when you take the oath of office to be the AG of a country, you also swear an oath of office. And if you go before a U.S. court to represent us and you cannot remember the day you became an SC and you lied and said you are a junior, that you perjured yourself. So you did something that is illegal, and you bring our judiciary, our legal system into total disrepute. How can you now come back and represent us? Those are the issues that I'd like you to address. And as a citizen, how can we bring this government to answer shouting and saying it on radio every 5 minutes? Doesn't help us. How can we bring all these injustices we see that you have identified with Mr. Cummins and Ms. WPC and all the rest of it? How can I, as a citizen, that does not have confidence in the government, the judiciary, the EBC, any of it? There's something that happened in the EBC for the last election that I'm still confused about. I took 3 minutes to vote in one polling division. That means 259 people will take 3 minutes to vote in that polling division. Yet, there was a polling division with close to 400, I believe, people who were without ID and so on, and they had to go through a longer process. And if you do the math, it works out to be 21 hours to vote, but we only had 12 hours to vote. So how is that possible? That confuses me, and I don't understand, and I want to know how can we get some redress for all these inconsistencies that we have seen this government being blatantly, what's the right word, corrupt.
Thank you, caller.
Well, caller, you've raised a series of issues there, and people say sometimes that, the opposition keep raising these things over and over, but why we keep raising is that we don't want people to forget.
You have a next one, Archie? All right, just hold on, we take this one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Welcome, caller, go ahead.
Good night, Victor.
Good night, my brother.
Good night, and to my very good friend and learned friend. Good night. How are you?
Sound like Brian Big.
Oh, good night.
Go ahead, brother, go ahead.
Yes. But Jayanti, I want to congratulate you and as well as our senators, and very much well led by our political leader. I mean, we stood in defense of democracy with that bail bill. So we had to show, and it was so unconstitutional, what this government wanted to do. were trying to deny persons for applying for bail. And as a criminal figure, I tell you myself, when I saw that coming, I know for a fact that the UNC would have stood in defense. And I want to congratulate you all. And I want to say as well, that not the man they call Amor. For God's sake, man, you are embarrassing yourself. You are embarrassing the fraternity. You are senior counsel. I'll give you that. Oh, for God's sake, sir, you are embarrassing even the silk that you wear. Sir, it's time to go. And take Sagram Singh with you too. I was Sagram Singh. I'll say it again, I said it last time. She came and said, basically, 120 days without bail is nothing. But clearly she doesn't practice in the court. Clearly she doesn't visit police stations. That when you see persons who are held without bail, whether in a police station or in the remand yard, it is so disgusting, it is nasty, it is filthy, it is so not fit for a human being. And for she to say that, for those who don't know, she operates out of a very senior council chambers before she became a minister. For God's sake, woman, you are embarrassing that chambers as well. Because that senior counsel, that lady, Pamela Elder, is a great attorney as well in the criminal law field. And you still have, you madam, have this embarrassment, woman. You need to go. I mean, you have Amor as an embarrassment. Sagram Singh is an embarrassment. The government is an embarrassment. I know Sagram Singh is here, we come from that cottage to get into St. Augustine. I mean, Jayanti, you have been doing a great job. You're always doing an excellent job this Senate. And I mean, keep the pressure on Mr. Cummings because Mr. Cummings learned something from the British, as you saw with the British Prime Minister. The Westminster system that you follow. And when you bring embarrassment to your government, as Mr. Boris Johnson has been doing, he followed Westminster principles, which was resign. That man needs to go. He should resign immediately. But in all of that, the man who's allowing him there is Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Sir, you need to go as well. For God's sake. Time to go. Call an election. And it's time for Kamala Prasad, the leader of the UNC. The only leader, the one leader that will take this country forward. The only leader in the UNC that will take us on. So continue the good work, Victor. It's always a pleasure to call you, my brother.
Thank you, Brian.
Continue the good job you're doing, Jayanti, again, as well as your senatorial team, led by the political leader.
Thank you, brother.
You know, our interesting point is that somebody raised with me, and one of the, I think it was Capital Bisoon or somebody else who had posted about it, and I saw it. And I think Capital is a very prolific writer. And, you know, he said that the infractions that have been committed in the United Kingdom that led to all of these resignations are so much less serious than what you have here.
Yeah.
You know, and it's amazing, eh? It's amazing the difference in standards. Good night, caller.
Good night, Honorable Senator and Victor. I'm inside again. Saying that we are the
Short and sweet.
failure and the collapse of these CPS, I want to add another investigation that has been outstanding. You remember a fellow by the name of Dylan Johnson? He got asylum in the UK.
Yes, yes.
We all agree to that. And in order to get that, some sort of investigation has to be done to justify the defense. The fact the British did that, what did our police service do? Because the man was shot. So, if we had a proactive police service, an investigation should have been opened. And as 3 years now, 4 years now, we should have had an outcome to find out who were the conspirators and the perpetrators of this injustice. I'm going to have a nice night.
So just to add to that, caller, just to add to that and help you out a little bit with that, is that there is an interview with Dillion Johnson that you will be hearing very early next week, please God. It is already recorded and it's at a safe place. So next week, early next week, you will get the full story from Guyana to Trinidad to Tobago to wherever. Stay tuned.
So yes, I mean, and it's amazing that the callers themselves could recollect all of these things, but so many
You was going to
people in
make
the
a
country are not
point
saying
with
that.
the caller before Brian Big call.
About
When he was saying what can he do in
Yeah,
relation to
into
the president.
about the recusal. So no, we have been
Right.
trying to, again, we have tried to press as much as possible. A lot of the legal action that we have taken so far, as much as possible, I would say, whenever it has been possible for us to go to the court, we have gone to the court. That is how we expose the wrongdoing and so on. But removing a government or a particular minister as a result of their misbehavior and so on falls to the police. And that is why, you know, it's not that we're just attacking the commissioner of police or attacking the police on the whole, but we do need to see some action, because those are the people with the power to act when there are instances of wrongdoing.
And that is what the people need to do. The
David
opposition
Nackett
cannot do it.
David Nackett has been writing relentlessly, calling for an investigation into that issue with Blissy Prasad and misbehavior in public office. We're not hearing anything.
Welcome, caller.
Hello.
Welcome, caller. Go ahead.
Let me ask both of you the question, right? Mr. Do you believe you're more preferred at that corner, UNC, the UNC part, or Gypsy? Do you think you're more preferred than them?
Caller, you want to repeat? You're kind of going and coming. You're breaking up a kind of way.
Can't hear you. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah.
You lost that call, Archie?
No.
Oh, caller, just repeat the question, please.
Some communication problem.
Probably should call her. We have a little technical difficulty
yeah.
with that caller. We're not hearing the question. Caller, you could call back, or you could hang up and call back. I think that might be the best thing to get up everything. So yeah, so you know, again, when you have interference in your independent institutions like the police service commission, the office of the DPP, judiciary, wherever it is, right, and you are not seeing things happening, that is why we cannot get rid of these people, because we are not getting the investigations, and those are the people that have the power to act.
Right.
So you know, we are really a country where, you know, do you remember when Mrs. Pasabi says I was Prime Minister, every Monday morning Rowley used to say this one had to resign, that one she should fire, this one, that one. Anytime that an accusation was made against someone, the political leader used to say, the Prime Minister then used to say,
go clear
your name and come back.
Yeah.
Go on it. But it's not just that she wanted them out of her cabinet, because these were very hardworking, some of them very hardworking, well-performing, well-liked ministers. The problem was this: you don't want somebody holding public office whilst they're under investigation, because the potential for influence.
Exactly. Welcome, caller.
Yes, it's me again. I just want to be quick. What I want to know is there a way that we could ever have in our parliamentary system where a person of who the government that you don't have any confidence could be drawn in and answer questions? Like how they have something in the Congress in the state that you have a panel and you have to answer questions. And so on, so that look, right now we have a commissioner of police, we have absolutely no confidence in. But there's nothing we can do about it. Thank you.
Well, we have joint select committees in Parliament, and actually one of the things that I made reference to in the in our debate on the bail bill was, you know, evidence given before a joint select committee.
Next one.
The problem is that the committees have the majority of government, so they tend to try to control the narrative there as well.
All right, we take this one. Welcome, caller.
Hello.
Yes, caller. Go ahead quickly.
You hear me clearly now?
Yeah, we hear you now. Go ahead.
I was asking if both of you all, right? I wanted to know if you believe there was more of the person in the UNC than Jack Warner or so think about that.
If we believe what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
What you say, Archie, if we believe what?
I know, I just hear UNC and Jack Warner.
Caller, repeat now, because I really want to answer you. Want to repeat what you just said? Tell me what you want to think about, caller. I really want to think about it.
I
Actually, let me talk something more. You want to ask both of us if we something more than Jack Warner in the UNC or some.
Well, you see, and
some kind of idiotic talk, yes.
It's like a kind of logic that that the Prime Minister has used as well. I hear him say when he come back from where he was in Suriname or something. He said if we didn't have this bail law for the last 3 years, even though crime increased, it would be so much worse if we didn't have it. And people like to compare things. Who is in power now? Who is responsible for the bloodbath that we saw over the weekend? Is Jack Warner? Is the UNC? Are we in control and do we have power? You all want to live in the past and talk about who do this and who do more, who do the next. That is not going to solve any of the crime that took place this weekend. It's not going to prevent any crime that's going to happen in the future unless you get rid of this incompetent government and install a proper government.
And that's the bottom line. You see, the fanatics and the way in which they believe that. Let me put it this way, frank and done with that whole story. On these programs, we don't have time to waste with old talk. This is a program where we bring the facts to the people and use the people who are to decide, because when time for an election is you are to go and make your choices. And we are here to bring the information for you. And I want you to think about that. We are here to bring the information before you so that we can open your eyes to see what the government is doing with your taxpayer dollar, the standard of living that the government have you living under, the poverty line that you're trying to raise your head out of and could never come above. That is what we're here for. So old talk and, let me put it this way, dotish talk, we doesn't have time for that.
Yeah, we really, you know, again, if we continue along this cycle of who thief first, who thief more, who didn't do this, who didn't do that, we will be stuck where we are. The point of the matter is you have to make an assessment as to whether or not what you see taking place right now is acceptable to you, or whether or not you want to see a change and you want to see something different. And
that's the bottom line.
Here. I fed up. I feel like I have like a broken record talking about resources for national security to solve crime. Putting people in jail for 120 days does nothing. We need CCTV. We need DNA. We need staff for the DPP office. We need better trained police officers. We need more court staff. We need more resources in the court to get the matters moving. We need the prisons to have more rehabilitative programs. If we are putting there all the ideas towards the government and to the population, and the government simply isn't doing it, it's for you to make a decision as to what is going to happen and how you make your decision. As I said before, the power lies right here. You have to do it. And if you want to live in the past and talk about who do what more, when, why, and however, well, those things, you know, and PNM have a way of bringing up this narrative that I don't think anybody even understands when they will just jump on something like Section 34. Do you even know what Section 34 is? Section 34 was a piece of legislation that the PNM voted for as well, you know. The PNM voted for it as well, you know, to remove matters that were of a certain age from the court. And when it was discovered that certain persons would have benefited from it, who were involved in one of the largest corruption cases that Reginald Amok I even remember being part of. When that was discovered, overnight, this government, the People's Partnership government, repealed it. And they fought against that repeal all the way to the Privy Council, and the government of Kamala Prasad-Bissessa fought them on it all the way to the Privy Council and won. So those people are today, when you talk about, oh yeah, we're going to jam them with PIACO 3 and PIACO 2 and PIACO 1. The only reason PIACO 1, 2, 3 and I think 4 still going on is because the Kamala Prasad-Bissessa government acted swiftly and without delay. They recognized the repercussions of what was going to happen, and they acted responsibly and repealed the law, and not just repealed it but fought against the attempts to free the persons by their attorneys and so on, right? And those are the facts. So when the PNM government, Section 34, them corrupt, and you want to sit down and take that, and you want to take basket from them with Section 34 and think that that justifies all of the wrongdoing. Every single thing that we have been talking about here for the last 3 hours almost, you wanted to, because the PNM bought Section 34, that is something, and what's it called? Live sport. Live sport. They talk about live sport. Anybody ever get, you ever see any minister in government get locked up in live sport? Marlene McDonald get locked up with Calabar Foundation. Why they don't talk about Calabar Foundation? They will say they bought Section 34, but they don't say Calabar Foundation. Right? So at the end of the day, stop taking baskets, stop taking chain up, and stop being fed distractions by a government that is a proven failure. They are incompetent. They do not care about poor people in this country. They do not care about development. They care about as we always say, friends, family, and financiers. And those are the people who are benefiting under this government, not the people who they want to throw in jail for 120 days because they get locked up by the police twice.
And that is one of the problems we have in this country, because the people in this country tend to listen to old talk and rubbish than to get the facts and make informed decision. You have voted for a government who decrease your standard of living, who destroy any form whatsoever of savings that you may have had. The future of your children and your grandchildren hangs in the balance because of the decisions of this government. This government have taken decisions and brought policy to reduce your standard of living in every and any situation, but to the end of the day, the people will not open their eyes in this country. Two problems we have. One is that they like old talk, and secondly, they like race. So everything for them is race and race and race, and to the end of the day, the only people who losing out in this country is those who make decision uninformed, those who go to the poll and vote because of a color of our skin, or because of a texture of our hair, or because you just like. Trinidad and Tobago have to move past that type of partisan politics. We have to make informed decision. We have to understand that vote and voting have consequences. And when we vote, we must know that we vote to support what is going on, or we vote to register with dissatisfaction with what is happening. And my advice to you, the population, is to take time out and examine where we were to where we are, and see who is at fault, and make the necessary adjustments to put back a government who have brought policies to improve your standard of living in every aspect, in health, in education, in take it action. Welcome, caller.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Listener, these people who support PNM, right? And I remember saying, they prefer his class and the PNM and the post police side. And this is them. Otherwise, it's never good.
You're having some problem, they call. You're breaking up and you're breaking down. What you come back with now? But sorry, I can't hear him, but I sorry mean what you say now. Sorry mean what you say. But we had to do what we had to do, despite what people feel. The opposition is here, and the opposition is here to stay, not in opposition, but to stay as spokespeople on behalf of this country. And while we are in opposition, we will do what we have to do in order to help make Trinidad a safe place and to improve your standard of living. But you have to do your part. You have to do your part. You have to stand up and speak out. You have to stand up against the wrongdoing of Keith Rowley administration. And if you don't do that, then you are just setting up yourself for a harder fall. Take it out. Welcome, caller.
Good night. I was not just, but what I was is that Rima, these PNM protesters, they prefer to under PNM government than to vote for full side minister. I tell you, yeah.
Can I say something about Arima? What they prefer to suffer under PNM than to vote back, Kamla? Well, that's, that is the mentality that, have a lot of people where we are today. So, if that is the way that people are looking at things, I don't know that anybody, and again, it is part of the corrupting of our society and our electorate with the use of race. Now, the fact of the matter is that if you continue to vote based on race, and if you continue to vote, as Victor said, on old talk, you will never see development in this country. In 2010, you had people coming together from every corner of this country, every race, every religion, and so on. And what we had was 5 years of unprecedented development in this country. And had we continued along that trajectory, I could tell you, we might have room in the prison now as opposed to looking for more place for prisoners. Because we would have had many more children with education and veering away from a life of crime and so on. When you have a child who they saying now is underperforming in SEA and cannot even get 50%, that child started primary school when Keith Rowley took government. Right? So you have to look at the impact on education and all of those things and the crime situation that we have now today. And as Victor said, because I think we're winding down now, I want to reiterate that the opposition is here to be your voice and to highlight issues. We will continue to speak out against wrongdoing. We will continue to expose wrongdoing. We will continue to demand answers. I have a saying that I always say, we fight them in the parliament, we fight them in the courthouse, and we fight them on the pavement. As much as we can, we do utilize the courts to try to expose wrongdoing and to get a consequence on behalf of the government. But the only thing that could really change a government in this country and change the course of your life and the course of your children's lives is when that bell ring, you go out there and you vote out this PNM administration and put a good government into office to take charge of the affairs of this country.
I want to thank the Honorable Senator for being here today. And I do trust and hope that the Honorable Senator will be here every Friday once it is possible. Senator Jayanti Lutchmedial, as far as I am concerned, is one of the individuals who I have a lot of respect for in relation to the way in which she carry about her duty. From where I sit, it might take me very much few years to come up.
But you're on the right track. You're right there. As you all know, Victor has graduated and he's on his way now to becoming a lawyer.
Right, it will take me a while.
Right.
But nevertheless, the fight is on. But I really want to say that she has brought a great light to you, the people, and helping you to understand more as to what took place in relation to the bill, because we know, of course, the government have a way of putting a narrative outside there that will help to confuse you and make you believe that, look, what happened there, we will be in serious trouble because of crime, and this was the bill to really solve the problem, and what the opposition did, and so on and so on and so on. But the fact remains is that over 2 years it was there and it didn't work. And it didn't work simply because the government, they are not taking the crime situation seriously. And a matter of fact, I will even dare to say that they are also, some of them are also involved in certain activities that will lead this country to go down a particular way. And it didn't now start, and if you don't believe me, you could go back and ask Sadiq Bash if he have an idea how the cocaine and the mortar bombs reach in his tank. And if you don't believe me, you could probably contact Vernon Paul family, and you will understand that when he come to Trinidad and brought the information to another acting PNM commissioner of police, and they told him to go back Venezuela, we'll come down there and record statements because it's too risky here. His family will tell you, as he land back in Caracas and he sit in a taxi, he was executed by 2 motorbike men. So it is not a game thing. It is not a game thing. But all of us collectively, the senators doing their part, the MPs doing their part, the leader of the opposition doing a part, and now it's time for us to do our part. So we encourage you, let us stand together united, put aside petty differences, put aside every other or any other consideration, and let us work united to ensure that we save Trinidad and Tobago, not just for you and me, but for our children, our grandchildren, and we could set the course for the unborn babies. Be a part of history. Let us stand strong and let us do what is important to save Trinidad and Tobago. I want to say thank you for your phone calls. I want to thank Archie, because without Archie, and let me just say this before we close, we will no longer be on the radio station. As I said to you, Omega XL is now part of the management there, and yesterday I was informed that the radio station have taken a position that this program is too strong and too sensitive for them. So we will continue to operate here from Atlantic Studio. You will have to catch us on social media platforms. Spread the word. YouTube, UNC, douglAR Politics, Facts Not Fiction, all those platforms, and I will also even put my account inside there also, where you could get us on all these social platforms, so you will be able to get the facts, because that is what we bring to you. Facts, not old talk. So we want to say thanks. We want to say thanks to our Honorable Senator.
Thank you, Victor, for having me.
And we will be in touch. Stay safe. God bless.
Everybody.